Canada is often celebrated for its friendly, apologetic demeanor. But beneath that calm exterior lies something extraordinary when war breaks out. Canadians reveal a fierce intensity that contrasts sharply with their usual politeness. What happens when these usually peaceful folks step onto the battlefield? They become unrelenting warriors, earning fearsome reputations for their attacks during wartime conflicts. Take the trench raids in World War I, for instance. Known for their innovative and aggressive tactics, the Canadians became the stuff of legend, utilizing everything from blackened faces and rubber gloves for stealth to handmade weapons designed for maximum lethality. They engaged in trench raids with a chilling efficiency that allowed them to reach nearly 1 kilometer behind enemy lines. By the end of the Great War, Canadians had gone from a relatively unknown force to one of the most respected military outfits in the world. Their extreme resilience and ruthless tactical methods, possibly motivated by revenge, or the brutal realities they faced, transformed them into a formidable fighting force. Join us as we uncover the incredible journey of the Canadian soldiers who, in the face of overwhelming odds and dire circumstances, revealed not just the fierce spirit of Canada, but the harsh realities of war itself. You've probably heard the jokes about Canadians, right? All polite, apologizing for everything, maybe a little obsessed with maple syrup and hockey. It's a friendly image, a nation of nice neighbors. But what if I told you that during the deadliest conflicts of the 20th century, the soldiers that other armies feared most were the Canadians? On the battlefields of Europe, they earned a reputation not for being polite, but for being some of the most ferocious and effective shock troops of the entire war. The friendly face of Canada hides a warrior's heart, a history written in courage, innovation, and cold, hard steel. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the polite myth to reveal the story of Canada's toughest fighters. Let's go back to the mud and trenches of World War I. This wasn't a war of grand, sweeping battles for much of the time. It was a brutal, close-quarters slugfest. And in this environment, Canadian soldiers didn't just adapt, they innovated. They perfected a terrifying form of warfare, the trench raid. While other armies might send over large, noisy groups, the Canadians turned it into a lethal art form. They would move under the cover of darkness, silent as ghosts, their faces blackened with burnt cork. They wore soft-soled shoes to muffle their steps and stripped off any gear that might rattle or clink. Their goal was simple and brutal: cause chaos, capture prisoners for intelligence, and instill absolute terror in the enemy. They didn't just use standard-issue weapons. No, they became masters of improvisation, creating vicious handmade clubs. They'd drive hobnails into heavy wooden batons or craft weapons from scavenged materials designed for silent, deadly work in the confines of a trench. Imagine being a German soldier, huddled in the dark, and suddenly the silence is broken by the whisper of movement, followed by the swift, brutal efficiency of a Canadian raiding party. It was psychological warfare at its most primal, and it worked. The Canadians became so feared for these nighttime raids that German troops knew that facing the Canadians meant a night of little sleep and constant, gnawing fear. This reputation for ferocity was solidified in April 1917 at a place called Vimy Ridge. This heavily fortified German position had resisted multiple attacks by British and French forces, costing them over 100,000 casualties. It was considered an impregnable fortress. Then it was the Canadians' turn. For the first time, all 4 divisions of the Canadian Corps fought together as one cohesive unit. They didn't just charge head-on. They planned meticulously. They built full-scale replicas of the German trenches to rehearse their attack over and over again. They pioneered new artillery tactics like the creeping barrage, where their artillery fire would move forward just ahead of their own advancing troops, creating a moving wall of explosions that kept the defenders' heads down. When the attack began on Easter Monday, the Canadians advanced behind this curtain of steel and fire. They were relentless. The fighting was savage, often hand-to-hand in the maze of trenches and tunnels. Stories from the battle paint a grim picture. There were reports, though often disputed and part of the brutal propaganda of war, that Canadians were so incensed by previous German actions, like the use of poison gas, that they were sometimes unwilling to take prisoners. Whether an official policy or the desperate reality of a hellish battlefield, the message was clear: pushing the Canadians too far had dire consequences. In just 4 days, they achieved what others had failed to do for years. They took Vimy Ridge. It was a stunning victory, a defining moment for Canada as a nation, but it was a victory bought with incredible courage and an almost terrifying ferocity. But here's a fascinating contrast. While the Canadians were earning this reputation for aggression, other parts of the front lines were experiencing a very different phenomenon known as the live and let live system. In some sectors, British and German troops, exhausted by the constant slaughter, developed informal truces. They'd shout warnings before firing artillery, avoid shooting at men carrying supplies or recovering wounded, and essentially agree to make life a little less miserable. The most famous example, of course, is the Christmas Truce of 1914, where soldiers from both sides famously met in no man's land to exchange gifts and play football. The Canadian sectors, however, were rarely quiet. Their operational doctrine was one of constant, aggressive pressure. While others might live and let live, the Canadian motto might as well have been dominate and destroy. They believed that relentless raiding and patrolling kept the enemy off balance and maintained their own combat edge. This stark difference highlights the unique, aggressive combat philosophy that the Canadian Corps cultivated. They weren't just participating in the war. They were actively seeking to master its brutal realities, turning the trench stalemate into their own deadly hunting ground, night after night. Now let's jump forward to the Second World War. The lessons learned in the trenches of the First War were not forgotten. When the Allies prepared for the largest amphibious invasion in history, D-Day, the Canadians were once again tasked with a crucial objective, a stretch of coastline codenamed Juno Beach. Of the 5 landing beaches, Juno was one of the most heavily defended. The Germans had built formidable concrete bunkers, machine gun nests, and a high seawall. The Allied planners knew it would be a tough fight. On June 6, 1944, the 3rd Canadian Infantry Division hit the beach. They faced intense machine gun fire, mortar, and artillery. The first wave of troops suffered terrible casualties, in some companies over 50%, but they did not falter. They fought their way through the barbed wire, over the seawall, and into brutal, close-quarters combat with the defenders. Displaying incredible grit and tactical skill, the Canadians not only secured their beachhead but also pushed further inland on D-Day than any other Allied force. While other units were still struggling to get off the beaches, the Canadians were advancing, silencing artillery batteries, and clearing towns. By the end of the day, they had linked up with the British forces from Gold Beach and established a formidable presence in Normandy. Juno Beach was a triumph of Canadian arms, a testament to their courage and the bloody echo of the determination shown at Vimy Ridge. But perhaps no unit embodies the elite, fearsome reputation of Canadian soldiers more than a special group from World War II, the 1st Special Service Force. You might know them by their German-given nickname, the Devil's Brigade. This was a joint U.S.-Canadian commando unit handpicked for their toughness and trained for the most demanding missions imaginable. Their recruits were often lumberjacks, miners, and outdoorsmen, men who were already tough as nails before the army even got to them. Their training was legendary for its brutality. They were masters of mountain warfare, airborne operations, amphibious landings, and silent killing. They learned to fight with knives, with their bare hands, with whatever it took to get the job done. Their signature weapon was the V-42 Stiletto, a fighting knife designed for lethal precision. The legend goes that the Germans found the bodies of their comrades with stickers left on them, bearing the force's red arrowhead patch and the words Das Dick End kommt noch, meaning the worst is yet to come. It was pure psychological warfare, and it terrified their opponents. Their most famous operation was the assault on Monte la Defensa in Italy. This mountain was a key point in the German winter line, a seemingly impossible peak to capture with sheer cliff faces. While other forces were stalled, the Devil's Brigade was sent in. From the muddy, brutal trenches of World War I to the cliffs of Italy and the beaches of Normandy in World War II, a clear pattern emerges. The stereotype of the polite, apologetic Canadian melts away under the heat of battle. What's left is a warrior spirit defined by innovation, incredible bravery, and a relentless, unyielding will to win. They weren't just soldiers. They were stormtroopers, raiders, and commandos who earned the fear and respect of their enemies. They proved, time and again, that behind the friendly smile of a nation known for its peacekeepers lies the heart of a lion. The world learned a valuable lesson: you don't mess with the Canadians. Thanks for watching. If you found this look into Canada's surprising military history interesting, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into the hidden stories of the past. See you next time.